Democracies around the world are under attack from all sides, and the technological resources available to malicious actors are multiplying. It will therefore be a never-ending battle.
The Canadian government's public inquiry into foreign interference in federal election processes and democratic institutions, and what we will call simply the Foreign Interference Commission in this video, released a fascinating and quite thorough report investigating all of the factors that go into foreign interference. Not all of them are what you see reported in the media or discussed by researchers, at least Western ones. Most of the press and social media you see focus on digital tactics, like the apparent use of Tik Tok and Twitter to sway public opinion toward candidates that favor certain foreign interests, or who are stirring up trouble to undermine democracy and shake public confidence in governments and public institutions. However, the Commission found that this is not the case, at least not in Canada. The Commission was established not because of overwhelming evidence of foreign interference into Canada's elections and attempt to destabilize its democracy as a whole, but rather because the general public became more aware of this issue over the past decade, with foreign interference, particularly from Russia, being a well-reported issue during the American election in 2016. I will explore this in more detail later in the video, but for now I'll just say this. While social media and digital platforms in general play a role, the Commission uncovered evidence that foreign interference often occurs in ways the average citizen might not notice, but immigrant and refugee communities may find these tactics depressingly familiar. While this channel focuses on digital issues, it is worth noting taking a look at foreign interference as a whole, as there is some overlap between offline and online interference, and the victims of lesser-known tactics deserve to have their issues discussed with the same importance as the ones that dominate the news and social media. The Commission conducted its work in two phases. The first was to examine and assess foreign interference by state and non-state actors and its impact on the integrity of the 2019 and 2021 federal elections. The Commission released its report on this phase in 2024. We made a video that in part discussed this aspect of the report. It also informed part of our working paper on foreign election interference. I'll provide links to the video and working paper here and in the description. The second phase looked at the Canadian government's capacity to detect, deter, and counter foreign interference directly or indirectly targeting Canada's democratic processes. But to really understand and detect what's at work here, we need to understand what it means. Here's the Commission's definition of foreign interference and the one we will use in this video. Foreign interference refers to a clandestine, deceptive, or threatening activity by a foreign state or those acting on a state's behalf that is detrimental to the interests of Canada. This covers traditional means of interference such as direct, person-to-person activities as well as digital forms. But what I found interesting is that the Commission believes that there is no common definition. In their report, they say such a common definition would not be feasible in the current geopolitical context. Canada may view certain activities as foreign influence or foreign interference, while adversaries may take the opposite view. As the Commission and others have noted, that foreign interference is not new. Countries have always worked to assert their own interests in foreign states, but with the spillover effect in Canada after the American elections, politicians became concerned about the possibility that new, more covert and destructive forms of interference were emerging. This was especially concerning given that these suspected forms were technological and moving more quickly than policymakers could keep up. When does foreign interference have an impact? As the Commission notes, foreign interference has an impact when there is a single instance in which a ballot is cast a certain way or not cast at all because of a foreign state's direct or indirect enticement. So why is it difficult to detect foreign interference? Mostly because there are many factors that go into determining how a person votes, from campaign strategies, the election system such as first past the post, and in American elections how the Electoral College distributes votes. But the main reason is that votes are secret in Western democracies, and as the Commission itself says, it is not possible to directly link misleading media narratives with how any given voter cast their ballot. Even assuming that some votes were changed as a result of these narratives, there is no way to know whether they are enough to affect the result. So what are some examples? How does foreign interference work? The Commission gives the example that China maintains that it is foreign interference for other countries to criticize it to failing to adhere to international human rights obligations, while Canada views such criticism as a legitimate way to hold them accountable as a member of the international community. But in terms of international law, there seems to be a discussion about what would actually be a legal definition. I covered this in my previous video, but I think it's important to quickly go over again what a legal framework for foreign interference could be. That is, two elements need to be present. The first is that the act must be legally attributable to a state, meaning that the evidence must substantiate the participation of the state being accused of interference, either directly or through a non-state actor that is working under the instructions of or under the direction or control of the state in question. The second element is that the action has to be determined to have violated a duty under international law. And I think this second element is where the arguments start. If we use the example of Canada's criticisms of China's human rights obligations, I think the definition applies in the how, not the what. It's fine for Canada to have an opinion on China's human rights record, and it's okay for China to have an opinion on, the quality of governance in Canadian institutions or something. I'm not a lawyer, so what I'm saying may not stand up to legal scrutiny. But it seems to me that if a country took part in activities such as a government using social media to create digital campaigns highlighting another government's human rights abuses to everyday citizens that the government prefers they not know about, that could be considered foreign interference. Another example is that for years, the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, China published air quality reports on a dedicated Twitter feed and exposed hazardous levels of air pollution in the city. The Chinese government considered this initiative a violation of its sovereignty, despite studies showing that this reporting contributed to global health benefits. But is it actually foreign interference? It's questions like these that complicate the discussion and why disagreements and disputes will continue for years to come. So where did foreign interference happen? Getting back to the Foreign Interference Commission, it documented several alleged incidences during the 2021 election, including, among other things, disinformation targeting the Conservative Party of Canada and its leader Erin O'Toole, and potential interference activities by India and Russia. Disinformation regarding the Conservative Party arose from intelligence that the party and O'Toole himself, who was its leader at the time, were subject of reports that appeared on Chinese language media outlets that were known to have, or may have, ties to the Chinese government or the Chinese Communist Party. The reports alleged, falsely, that O'Toole would ban the social media platform WeChat, that he was the Canadian version of Trump, and that he considered breaking diplomatic relations with China. As far as India is concerned, the Commission heard that India may have attempted to provide clandestine financial support to its preferred candidates during the 2021 election without the candidates' knowledge. And Russia, the Commission did not receive any evidence of a coordinated Russian disinformation campaign during the 2021 election, despite suspicions coming from social and mainstream media. While officials have noted that Russian cyber activity has been observed in Canada, they have been carried out against Canadian democratic institutions. However, they do note that this needs to be monitored given the country's strong support for Ukraine, that there may be interference in the next election, which could come as early as spring 2025. So did this interference affect the election? The Commission was not convinced. As previously mentioned, it's difficult to draw a definitive connection to the events and the outcome, either at the riding level or the overall result. While they believe that there may have been small instances here and there, they could not say with any certainty, and the parties all agree that the Liberals fairly won the election. So what are the main drivers of interference? Those of us who live in the mainstream of society have the privilege of looking at foreign interference from a purely abstract lens. We can be aware of the attempts at media manipulation, and it currently doesn't have too much effect on our lives. But those in refugee or immigrant communities may have an entirely different experience. As many will tell you, just because you're able to leave a repressive regime behind doesn't mean they still can't get to you. This is a process called transnational repression. This is a particularly insidious form of state interference to an individual or group. Canada describes it as foreign state activity to monitor, intimidate, and harass diaspora communities to achieve foreign state objectives. And this is not a problem unique to Canada. The think tank Freedom House identified 160 instances of physical transnational repression alone across 34 countries in 2024, including assassinations, abductions, assaults, detentions, and unlawful deportations. They single out the governments of Uganda, Cambodia, Russia, Iran, and China as the top perpetrators. In Canada, the Foreign Interference Commission identified Iran, China, and India as being the main perpetrators of this activity in the country. They note that assessing the threat is difficult because targeted individuals are often reluctant to report their experiences. They may fear reprisals against friends or relatives back in the old country, or they may come from communities who may distrust law enforcement and security agencies. Transnational repression is particularly harmful in that it doesn't give the targeted people the opportunity to exercise their full rights as a citizen or resident, which include freedom of expression, freedom of assembly and protest, religious freedom, and the right to engage in Canadian democratic life and electoral processes. It also doesn't provide relief from the authoritarian rule that they likely sought to escape from, denying them a sense of security and justice that democratic institutions are meant to cultivate. So Canadian elections are not influenced to any meaningful extent according to the Commission. But other countries may not be so lucky. Romania, for example, is rerunning its election after declassified intelligence provided evidence that a major Russian interference campaign propelled far-right Moscow-friendly candidate Călin Georgescu from outsider status to frontrunner after leading in the first round of the country's presidential election. In the Balkans, research by the Institute for Strategic Dialogue found that misinformation has played a major role in efforts to destabilize the countries of the former Yugoslavia, an example being, among others, the snap election in December 2023, with Alexander Vucic's far-right Serbian National Party looking to regain its absolute majority in an election that was marred by what was called persistent and systematic abuse of institutions and media, with the European Parliament calling for an investigation. Will things get better? Right now, things are not looking hopeful. They will likely get worse before they get better, with Western leaders like the United States scolding allied countries for not conforming to an absolutist definition of free speech, and the inevitable fracturing of relations that will occur, to the dilution of content moderation policies by social media platforms that work to protect vulnerable communities and individuals from online harms. It certainly seems like the world is moving towards a new social Darwinism where the already moneyed and powerful look to consolidate their dominance. Foreign election interference is only one symptom of this problem. With international relations in disarray in a way that hasn't been seen in this lifetime, it is important to recognize and counter the tactics that repressive and even so-called democratic regimes are using to further their own interests. One way is to be aware of the impact of artificial intelligence on future elections. The main issues here are deepfakes, the ability to create fake audio and video to have people say or do things they haven't done, and the ability to create content at scale. It used to be that social media was fairly time-consuming to create. Now complete disinformation campaigns can be created in minutes. Guardrails, where they exist, are currently easy to get around. Another is to ensure your local representative is aware of the tactics that adversarial actors use. At least in Canada, politicians and parties are trained to recognize and secure their own political communications. Next, ensure that protections against transnational repression are robust and effective. While this is admittedly a difficult problem to solve and complex to deal with on both the local and diplomatic levels, protecting immigrant and refugee communities and diasporas in general are key to allowing all members of society to enjoy their full rights and freedoms. I hope you liked this video. If you could please give us a like and click the subscribe button, I would really appreciate it as it helps us spread our message. Has foreign interference affected you? Please let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching.